Welcome to this Searchmetrics webinar on SERP features. My name is Malte Landwehr. I'm the VP product at Searchmetrics, and with me is Markus Penzig, a senior SEO consultant in our digital strategies group. And I think Markus is best known for being the foremost expert in Europe on SEO in China and on Baidu, after having lived there for a while and having led SEO teams there. So what will we talk about today? We're going to talk about SERP features. We're going to dive a little bit into an industry comparison. We're going to look at some websites that are doing it right and some that are doing it wrong, and going to see where they have potentials for optimization. And in the end, we're going to answer some questions that we previously collected, and everybody can also ask additional questions during the webinar. You have a small form where you can just type them in, and we can see them directly, and we'll then answer them in the end. So while I prepared my slides, or my part of the slides for this webinar, this Facebook feature that shows you stuff you did 4 years, 5 years ago popped up. And I saw this post that I had made many years ago. And basically back then, I was very surprised by this search result that was, in my mind, so rich of features that weren't there previously. But actually, if you look at it, it's just site links and Google News and the knowledge panel on the right. So in 2019 terms, this would be a pretty boring search result, actually. But back then, I was blown away by how many features there are. And nowadays, one of my favorite examples, I hope it's somewhat recognizable on the slide, is the keyword news, because it's a band and also a very good burger restaurant next to the Searchmetrics headquarters in Berlin. So when I'm in the office and I Google for Muse on an iPad, I get an insanely feature-rich search result with, I think, 6 or 7 different sliders, a regular YouTube slider, a YouTube channel slider, a news slider, 3 restaurant sliders. So many of these elements that you see that are so rich in images and videos actually extend to the side, because you can swipe to the right side or to the left when you're on your mobile device. And the traditional organic results are almost invisible if you look at the whole thing, and you have to scroll twice to see multiple organic results. And there are many similar keywords out there. And one other SERP feature that I recently saw that really shocked me was when you typed in the name of a brand into google.com in the US. And if the brand name was really short, it was the same as the stock ticker symbol. For example, for Yelp, it would show you the stock price even before the brand domain. And I mean, this is clearly a navigational search. I don't think that even half the people, probably not even 10% of people who type Yelp into Google care about the stock price. They probably care about getting to Yelp. And since stock prices can go up or down, there's actually a pretty big chance that when this happens, the trend is downgoing. And then it could be really bad for a company's reputation. And clearly, Google quickly recognized they did a mistake here. They rolled it back. But I think a couple of companies were pretty shocked for the 1 week or 2 weeks that this was live. And now I'll hand over to Markus, and he will show us a couple SERP features and share his wisdom with us.
Yeah, hello everybody. I think Malte already explained what SERP features actually are, but I'd like to repeat that you all know the 10 organic blue links on the SERP page. That's the usual organic result, but everything else is called a SERP feature, and we're gonna go through some of them and have a look on how to get them. I mean, one of the first ones, is probably the one in the top of so many search results. It's the Google Ads, and how to get it is simply bidding on it through Google, formerly AdWords, now Ads. looking at the top here, you can see a couple of products with pictures, price, some even have some review stars. This is part of Google product or product ads. Also, you can bid on this one. Formerly, this comes out of Frugal, which is one of Google's first vertical searches for products. Free in the beginning, later changed to product search, and now you can bid on them. So quite easy to get. And actually, it's a big tip because clicks here on product ads are still cheaper than for many keywords on Google Ads. On the right-hand side, you can see the knowledge graph, informations on entities. In this case, it's a movie. We're going to look into this a little later. If you scroll down a little, then there's this box of videos. It's a YouTube slider, and it's pretty much a no-brainer. If you want to get into this YouTube slider, you probably have to have a video on YouTube. You see these are 10 blue links, and if we remember that some of these are probably in the top are Google Ads, then you can see from the very known eye tracking studies that there's not so much room left for organic results that you can actually click on. And if you think a little further, that you probably don't have all the results on one page or on one screen. If you have to scroll, then there's this place above the fold where you only have like 2.5 blue or 2.5 organic search results. And even less if there is some kind of other vertical. So, but looking into how to get these verticals, I mean, we've just seen the video vertical, the YouTube results, and looking at the phrase of how to get your lawn prepared for springtime. Then we can see these videos, which actually are pretty much the same if you just do the same search on YouTube itself. There are 4 results. The first 2 are shown on the Google SERP already, and the 4th one, I think, as well. And looking at the simple words, I mean, there is a how in the search and the how in the results as well. Prepare is something like to get ready, your lawn, and spring. So pretty much what you need to do is name your word or name your video, just like the SERP term that you want to rank for. Having it in the description also helps. Something that many don't use is taking the captions. So the audio of the video can actually prepare it as text and giving to YouTube as well. This helps Google and YouTube to recognize what's being spoken on the video. Another vertical that comes very often is the image integration. This one is on how to make a paper boat or how to fold a paper boat. Looking at the first image, so clicking on it, you will get to Google Image Search and see the picture a little bigger. And how to prepare for it? Well, that's quite easy. This is the page that this picture was found on. And actually, it's got the title, got it in the URL, in the H1s, it's got it in the text. And looking a little deeper, we can even see it here. Very similar phrase on how to fold paper boats, the alt attribute of the image. So doing pretty fairly good image optimization helps on getting into these. On forums, I see quite often the question on how to get these extended links. And many of you probably know already, but for the ones who don't, this is called site links. And how to get them is quite easy. I mean, these are usually navigational links. And navigational links means or navigation searches, and navigational searches are searches for your brand. So it helps to optimize your website for your brand. And having the example of Nike, it helps to have the same, your brand name in your domain. This results in getting multiple links from many different websites with exactly your name linking to your website. You should have position 1 already. If not, prepare for it, get more authority. And position 1 usually results in a lot of impressions and a big CTR, especially for navigational searches. This will, in the end, result in site links. There's a couple of more things that might help getting your brand well known and trusted by Google. One is, of course, getting a personalized HTTPS snippet certificate. This one is, well, fairly new in the last couple of years, came up. It's a SERP feature. It's actually a featured snippet. And I would guess that this is probably something that most of you expected to see when you were looking at into this webinar. And this featured snippet, it's called the answer box. And how to get these is, well, it's about answering questions. And many of you might ask if it really makes sense to get these featured snippets, because usually they answer already the question the searchers were asking for, and they probably won't click on the results, right? But as you can see here on the red little bubbles, the answers are not giving in full length. So many searchers are actually looking for more information, and more information is found on the blue link that is just below the answer itself, meaning the click to your website. Something that is seen very often in these answer boxes is also the image. In this case, it's an image from the exact very same website, but sometimes the image is drawn from other websites. So still doing good image SEO would help you to even capture featured answers or featured snippets from others as well in some way. But Google already is preparing to give answers to even more questions. And what are these questions that they want to answer? They actually show in their SERPs with the box of people also ask. So if you're preparing to get some answer boxes, some feature snippets by yourself, well, have a look at these people who also ask and see if you can answer the questions better than the actual answer boxes do in the moment. Sticking to the example of how to make bread, this was the website showing up. And it helps to have the answer to the question that was searched for, that you want to rank for, in actually one HTML snippet that is easily recognizable for Google. So in this case, it's a div surrounding everything. We had a feature answer of bullet points or of a list. So also having a list in your HTML code helps acquiring this answer. Some further indications on what you're wanting to show, in this case, recipe, even is a good sign for Google to see if the answer is nice. This very example of a recipe being shown, but there's even more that you can do to show Google what your page is about, what your result is about. And having schema.org data for recipes, they did it, helps to Google, to help Google understand that your page really is about recipe. So what are the keywords that you actually can get the featured snippets for? In our keyword research tool on Searchmetrics, we have this keyword discovery. And if you type in keyword there, I search for bread, then you can see in the column of SERP feature integrations these little crowns. And these actually show that this is a keyword that we have seen a featured answer for. And going for such kind of keywords is little more secure to get the answer by yourself. It's easier to hijack an answer than building an answer where Google did not decide yet to put one. There are different kinds of answer boxes, and looking at the actual search results gives you a hint on what it needs in your HTML source to acquire these kind of answers. For example, this one, it's clearly a paragraph. So showing a paragraph or using a paragraph in your code helps getting these. If Google is showing bullet points, well, you should try using an unsorted list in your HTML. If there's table kind of data in the SERP feature, use a table that clearly shows what kind of data, what kind of columns you want to give over. And we actually have another webinar on YouTube already. Okay, Google, how do I get into the answer box is something that you can look into if you want some more answers on exactly these terms. I'm giving back to you, Mark.
Thanks. Those were really nice insights. And now let's dive into some industry comparisons. So one thing we did was we looked at a bunch of keywords in the e-commerce space, travel space, finance space, and health space. And we checked for the existence of featured snippets and direct answer. And with direct answer, in this case, I mean the ones that come directly from the Google Knowledge Graph. So something like, how old is the Queen? What's the capital of Germany? These types of things where Google will not show a featured snippet, but they will just show the answer because they are like 100% sure based on a knowledge graph that they can answer the question. And as we can see in the finance and health space, these kinds of keywords where Google gives an answer are much more common. Of course, one reason could be that these spaces are more informational, while e-commerce and travel are more transactional. But the interesting thing here is that the level of keywords where Google thinks it's good to give a direct answer or a featured snippet is a lot higher. Whereas for an e-commerce keyword, it might be that the answer to the search intent is a product listing ad. So can we use SERP features and can we analyze them and build better landing pages, especially in e-commerce space? I say yes, and I want to show you a little example. So one of the functionalities we have in our research cloud is that I can type in any domain like Nextco UK. And for all the keywords where Nextco UK is ranking, I can see A, what kind of SERP features are present, and B, what is the presence of Nextco UK in these. So let's actually only focus on images and featured snippets. And let's ignore how well Nextco UK is performing for these. Let's only focus on the fact that they exist. Then we can see here that there are images for 63% of keywords and featured snippets for only 3% of keywords. Since I'm really bad at remembering numbers, let's write it down. And let's do the same for ASIS and DBAMS. And then we can see that for all of these, the number of images is roughly the same and the number of featured snippets is roughly the same. It feels like we found a little trend here. And now let's take a completely different website, uswitch.com. It's a comparison site mainly for like subscription kind stuff. Here we can suddenly see featured snippets for 30% of keywords and images only for 12% of keywords. Let's also put that in our table because we want to compare these numbers. And let's also use all the keywords where Compare the Market is ranking in our Research Cloud and all the keywords where Money Supermarket is ranking in our Research Cloud. And then we can calculate the averages, and we see that there's a distinct trend and a distinct difference between the fashion e-commerce site and the market comparison or subscription comparison sites. And let's create a little chart or diagram with the images and the features. And let's put these industries we just looked at into bubbles. And we can see that they end up at very different locations. Let's draw two lines so that it looks a little bit more scientific. And now if we think about the difference between comparing two credit cards and buying a pair of jeans, I think we will very, very quickly come to realize that this difference is a no-brainer, right? If I compare subscription-based products, it's a very logic-based decision. It's a product, or these are typically products that require explanation. They are non-physical goods, so I can't just take a picture of my mobile phone subscription that I have, and the purchasing decision is mainly done in the prefrontal cortex of the brain. Now, and when it's about fashion, I will normally not use logic to buy it, right? I will make an emotional decision for the purchase. The limbic system will have a larger influence on the decision, and these are physical goods, so I can actually take a picture of them. But still, by having this information, let's imagine I have a website, a really large e-commerce site that is covering both of these topics. Just by looking at this comparison, by just looking at data from the Research Cloud and the SERP features, I can determine that if I want to rank well and want well-converting landing pages in the fashion space, I need to shift a larger portion of my content budget to images. And I need to make sure I have a landing page layout and a landing page template that allows for the display of multiple high-quality, probably large images. On the other hand, for the market comparison, I need to shift a larger part of my content budget into textual content, and this can be typical paragraph of text. It can also be a table or a list. And probably I need to allocate some of that budget into research because it's a logic-based decision. It's a product that requires explanation, right? And Google thinks that for many, many questions that people type into Google, it's a good idea to give a featured snippet as the answer, which is a list or a table or a paragraph of text. So when I do this for many, many other industries or many, many other segments that I think about going into, I can already draw conclusions from the distribution of the SERP features, what I need to pay attention to when I create my landing pages. Now, can we do something else with this data? Yes, we can. The data I just showed you, I didn't do it, my colleague Stephen did it. We gathered this data for many, many other e-commerce sites, and we put it in a similar chart, right, with the images and the featured snippets. And I don't know if you can see the names, but we see some of the ones we already talked about, like Nextco UK and Compare the Market and Money Supermarket. And the interesting thing is that these clusters, they don't just exist for fashion and for the comparison sites. So if we look at this, we see that the market comparison sites, as we already saw, are all grouped together. The real estate's websites are grouped together. In the flight space, everything is grouped together. The other travel sites look pretty similar: electronics, DIY, fashion, baby. And I did the same thing for the 100 largest e-commerce sites in Germany, and the clusters look almost the same. So there are, of course, there are always slight differences. If you ran a typical cluster analysis, the clusters would look a little bit different, but still there's a very, very clear trend that certain types of websites have very similar SERP features. or very similar SERP feature distribution, this makes sense, right? Because the search intent is the same, the keywords that they are ranking for is hugely overlapping. And then again, the same logic we just discussed applied. If I create content in the fashion, DIY, or baby space, I need a lot more images than if I do it in the electronic space. And one thing that stood out, and it happened both for the UK data and the Germany data, is that the real estate sites have such a small amount of featured snippets and such a short amount or small amount of images, because you would expect these are physical products that you need to show, and you would also expect that there's a lot of explanation required. But I believe this is happening because only the first part of the sales funnel is happening online, because actually all the other stuff you can normally buy online, but when you want to rent a house or buy a flat, the stuff that is happening online is actually only lead generation, right? You're still going to visit on site, you're going to have phone calls, going to have in-person meetings. So that's probably why this behavior that you would expect is not represented online, because it's only the top of funnel of the top of the sales funnel. Our learning is that, things vary by industry, and we can probably use this data to make some content strategy decisions. Now, if we dive into one niche, are there further differences? Of course, the answer is yes. So I've compared some keywords from the hotel space, flights, and car rentals. And if we look at the overall distribution of SERP features, we can see some pretty huge and significant differences, right? So let's look at Google Maps. It's almost not present at all when you search for flights. On the other hand, Google Flights is absolutely crushing it when you search for flights, right? It's there for almost 3 and 4 keywords. The knowledge panel is much more dominant for hotels than for any of the other keywords. Related questions are more common when you search for flights. And featured snippets, for some reason, are only showing up for car rental keywords, so almost only showing up. And then images has more, hotels have more images showing up than the other keyword sets. So again, very huge differences. And let's look at a few of these after we have accepted that, yes, there are differences. So for the hotels, why are there so many maps and knowledge panels? Well, it's quite simple. Google has a special Google Maps hotel result. And I think this is actually not the latest layout. I think they made some tweaks again. And for the knowledge panel, I hope you can recognize it on the screenshot. The hotel knowledge panel on the right is actually longer than the list of organic search results. And it has everything in there: images and maps, ability to book it directly via Google, ability to book it via other offerings like Booking and Hotels.com, so that the European Union doesn't slap another fine onto Google. You have ratings in there. You have information on accessibility, Wi-Fi, user ratings. Basically, everything you would expect to find on the likes of Booking.com, everything is in there. That's probably why it's longer than the search results. And I'm waiting for the time when Google starts making this even more prominent, because they basically have all the content you need on hotels. And then for flights, the most dominant thing, of course, is Google Flights. And I guess this is not a big surprise. What has surprised me when I did some research is that even when I search for United, for Delta, for Lufthansa, for Ryanair, for KLM, above the brand domain, there is Google Flights. And that probably means that Google Flights gets a lot of interaction from people. And I found that pretty interesting. And actually, some of these airlines, they don't even have the 6 big blue site links that you would expect, right? Some of them only have 1 to 4 site links. Some of them only have the small inline site links where there is no preview. There's just like the one line of blue links. And this also tells me that probably a lot of clicks for these branded searches go to Google Flights. And the second thing that is so popular with flight searches is the questions. And actually, it makes sense, right? Because for many people, going on an airplane is still an experience. It's still something where they have a lot of questions. They might still be doing something wrong. People are asking themselves, can I don't know, pack this bottle of water? Which terminal do I have to go to? Et cetera, et cetera. So if you are active in the travel space and you want to rank for flights keywords, I would absolutely consider creating FAQ style content, so frequently asked questions, and optimizing those for featured snippets, because there's a lot of traffic to be gained. And one of the things that stood out, and this is rare, is that there are more Google AdWords on the bottom than on top in the flight space. But I mean, the answer is pretty boring. It's simply because there's Google Flights on top. So Google won't even display regular AdWords on top if they have Google Flights available, which again speaks to how much interaction Google Flights does create. Another thing we can look at is the distribution of SERP features in the sales funnel. So what I did here is I performed some keyword research for a car manufacturer, and I clustered them into interest, desire, action, and retention keywords. And then I tagged them this way in our suite, and I had a look at the SERP feature distribution. And again, we see some interesting things that make sense. Videos are much more prominent in the interest and desire phase of the sales funnel, because this is the phase where the user still needs to be convinced, is maybe likely to watch a video, because the questions are not, or the search intent is not that specific yet. Whereas once it comes to the action and the retention phase, there are almost no videos showing up. Then the product listing ads, they increase the deeper you go into the sales funnel. Of course, the product listing ads in themselves are very, very rare when you're searching for car keywords, because most car manufacturers do not sell their cars online, right? This is only for equipment. Then the related questions increase the deeper you go into the sales funnel. And again, that makes sense as well, because the deeper you are in the sales funnel, the more specific you are, the more likely you are to have a specific question. Then we have a spike in Google Maps when we come to the action phase. And then again, that makes sense, because as I said, you cannot buy a car online in most cases. You buy it at a dealership. So the action is actually not to click on buy car. The action in many cases is to get the address for the dealership and go there. And then the featured snippets and direct answers, they increase tremendously in the retention phase. And that's because Google has a ton of structured data on cars. And it's not even featured snippets that they are showing. It's stuff from their knowledge graph. So try it out with a couple of car keywords. It works in many languages. If you look for the warranty, for the price, Google will in many cases show you very interesting information. And some of these knowledge panel type results actually look pretty transactional to me, because there's a lot about price and cost of the car. And then, let's jump to the potential for optimization. We have researched a couple of interesting results. And again, I have to say, actually, my colleague Steven researched all of these. So one of the things we did is we took the domains Home Depot and Lowe's in, I think this is data for the US, and we looked at the overlapping rankings in our research clouds. So as we can see, the overlap is pretty big. So from that, we can guess that these two companies, without knowing anything about them, which we might happen to do, are fighting for the same keyword set, right? So they must have similar content, similar offerings. Now, if we look for the keyword set of Home Depot, there are Google images for roughly 60% of their keywords. And for 1 in 3 of these image boxes, they show up. So that's a pretty decent rate of image optimization. Let's look at their competitor. They have image boxes for 60% of keywords, roughly the same number, but they only show up in 1 of 6 image boxes. So they have a huge potential to optimize. And if they had the same level of image optimization, they could increase their presence in image results by 70%. So if I was the SEO for Lowe's, I would look at what is Home Depot doing. And by the way, this is no critique, because it could be that they made a conscious decision to say, Image SEO is not important to us. We're going to sacrifice the ranking of our images in order to be able to use more base64 inline images or a strange version of lazy loading that the Googlebot doesn't understand. There are many reasons to not optimize for images, but the potential is there. We did a similar thing. Oh no, actually we dived a little bit deeper into the data. So on the keyword sets for loaves, who actually is ranking for images? Because they themselves are only on position 3, and then actually for their own keyword set, so only for the keywords where they themselves are ranking with some kind of content. Amazon and then of course Home Depot are beating them. And since these are direct competitors who have a similar business model, similar content, and since they are already themselves relevant because they are already ranking for these keywords, this is actually something it's not necessary for this to happen, right? If you do proper image SEO, you should be, for your keyword set, for your organic keyword set, where you're already ranking organically, you should be also the #1 source for organic images. Let's look at some more potentials. So we looked at weather domains, weather.com. They have images for roughly 53% of their keywords, but they themselves only show up in less than 1 out of 53 of these image boxes. And it's the same for AccuWeather, and it's the same for the Weather Network. And this looks like a lot of unused potential to me, because if you're already ranking for these keywords, why not provide an image to get additional traffic? And actually, if you are a weather website, and maybe you're already ranking for a keyword like weather in Berlin or climate Berlin, why not create a quick image where you throw together 4 pictures from the 4 seasons? Yeah, you have autumn, winter, spring, etc. From the city or from the destination where you already have a landing page where you're already ranking. This kind of image would actually provide value to users, and you can probably create these images on the cheap, either by training some kind of AI or by hiring a couple of interns, whatever is cheaper. And you could grab a lot of traffic from images, so from the image search. Then we looked at a couple of other websites that are in the DIY space. And we again had a look at images. And so for each of these, for 60% of their keyword set, there are images showing up. But the levels of optimization are very, very different. So Toolstation is doing a really good job. Screwfix, Wix, similar optimization levels. But B&Q and Homebase have, again, a huge potential to get more out of their images. And in the health space, where we know there are a lot of featured snippets, we, of course, ran the same analysis for featured snippets. And here the numbers vary a little bit, like for how many keywords there are featured snippets. So it's 30 to 40% of keywords. But then again, the level of optimization is very, very different. Healthline doing an outstanding job. MedicineNet has a lot of potential for improvement. By the way, if you are an agency, take a screenshot, send this to MedicineNet, and pitch them featured snippet optimization. You're welcome. Now, are featured snippets worth it? Is something you may ask. The answer is yes. So here's one example. If you look for what is Searchmetrics, there's actually a featured snippet that explains what is Searchmetrics. And this is not a big thing, but think about voice search. Right? When I perform voice search on my phone or on my Google Home device, in many cases, Google does nothing else but reading out the featured snippet. So whoever is ranking in the featured snippet is dominating voice search. And there's only one result in voice search. So definitely something to look into. Here's some numbers that Izzy Smith from Sixt has shared in a previous Searchmetrics webinar. So I'm just quoting her. Sixt has a landing page on basically car brands. And until they got the featured snippets, they had almost no traffic. And when they got the featured snippet, sorry, that was too quick. When they got the featured snippets, it's this very visible spike where the traffic increased significantly. So as Marcus mentioned previously, if you manage to not answer the complete question in the featured snippet, if you give people the impression that there's more to come, they will click and you will get a lot of traffic. You will also get more money. So another example that Sixt has published for, I think it's Car Hire Croatia, they are organically only on position 4, and then they got position 0. And it increased their bookings, so it tripled their bookings, and their revenue actually increased by 600% on this landing page. So even for commercial or slightly commercial terms, it is possible to get a featured snippet, and it is possible to get traffic that converts and spends money. If you want to learn more on this, there are 3 resources I can recommend. The first are slides that, this is all from Izzy Smith from Sixt in cooperation with Searchmetrics. The first is a slide deck she presented at our summit in London last year. The second is a blog article she and I wrote on 36 questions on featured snippets. And the third one is a webinar we did where we got all of these questions. If you want to dive deeper, these are some sources. Yeah, then we come to the questions and answers. So I guess there are some questions that have been asked live. If you still have questions, feel free to ask them now. Otherwise, we will start with some of the questions we've gathered earlier on various channels. So we talked about image optimization, and one question is, especially with the changes to the layout that Google did, is it still possible to get traffic from Google Images?
Yeah, I think it's still possible to get traffic through Google Images. I mean, the first click on the vertical in the normal search results leads you to the image search with a fairly good image that you can look at. But if you are not just looking for what to see, but also get some more details, you probably click on this image and will land on the actual web page.
Yeah, and another question was if the traffic from the images actually converts.
That is highly dependable on the niche, I think. For the furniture area, for example, people are tending to look at different kinds of furniture, different sofas, for example, and click on the ones they like. And if they are landing on a shopping website, they might buy. Yeah.
True. It's also my experience, especially if you're in the travel space, for example, it's super visual, where people actually nowadays, I have the feeling, switch away from image search and go directly to Instagram search. This is definitely something where this traffic can then at one point also convert. A more technical question. When I do lazy loading on images, so only when I scroll down, the images are loaded, do I hurt my image rankings?
That's actually a good question. I mean, lazy loading is usually done for big lists of images, so they usually have a very low resolution. And the bigger images are usually shown on like PDPs, product detail pages, where they are quite bigger and they usually do not have lazy loading. So I believe for the pages that show fairly good resolution images, where you don't use lazy loading in the end, it doesn't hurt.
Makes sense. Then we have 2 questions on schema. So one is, what kind of markup is the best for featured snippet optimization? Then a related question, what is the future of schema? Do you think the importance will grow? Do you think it will go away?
Let's start with the first one. The format that you should use for schema.org is JSON LD, which Google prefers. They can read the others as well, but they prefer JSON LD, and it's even easier for the coders to implement them. I think the markup of schema data will grow and will be more important in the future. I mean, there are so many entities that you can actually use that Google does not show a feature snippet for or featured results for, but helps them understand even more. And the more you use in schema.org data, the more Google understands your website. Even if they don't show featured something, they might rank you better.
Yeah, and there are pretty interesting new markups like Speakable, for example, which could be really relevant for voice search. Of course, one thing you should always consider is the more information you give Google, the more likely they are at one point to just accept it as a fact, integrate it into the knowledge graph, and just give out that data as a direct answer without mentioning any source. But that's a strategic question everyone has to answer for themselves. Then we have two questions on Google News or news publishers in general. So one is, what do you recommend for news publishers? I guess this is like targeting what kind of SERP features. And the second question is specific, if you have any advice on optimizing the Google News snippets or optimizing for Google News in general, maybe.
Google News, I think, is pretty much important, especially on mobile devices. And mobile devices is an area where speed matters. So getting into AMP, accelerated mobile pages, makes sense because they're quite fast. Then Google tries to rank the news in this case. So it makes it's not just the speed of the website; it's also the speed in which you publish the news, and are you faster than the others? So this makes sense. Which kind of feature snippets? Yeah, of course, the news one was. And in some cases, it matters in image search as well. Yeah.
And then we have a question, what kind of schema markup can help with being the source for Google Assistant?
You just mentioned it, actually. The what was it called?
Speakable?
Speakable, exactly. To tell Google what is the best speakable answer to a certain kind of question.
Yeah, also, also there's like a huge correlation between featured snippets and the assistant answer.
Sure.
It's not always the featured snippet answer, and I honestly don't know if the assistant team is using a different algorithm or if they are simply using a slightly outdated cached version of the featured snippets. But when I test this regularly with my Google Home device, and it's not a one-on-one match between the featured snippet and the answer.
But it's overlapping quite often.
Yes, for certain types of questions. Of course, the Google Assistant answers many questions with stuff that comes directly from the knowledge graph where there is no featured snippet. And then we have a question if we have a case study on voice search that we can share. So I don't have one.
I also don't have one, but if you have one, maybe just share it to us and we give it to every one of you.
Yeah, I think in general, many people actually ask that question right now, like especially are there cases of people making money with voice search? And I have to say, I don't know of any really good examples, but I think it's undeniable that voice search will in the future be one of the most important channels. And I've recently seen numbers that only a tiny percentage of people owning an Alexa device have performed an actual purchase. And then even of those, only a tiny portion has performed a second purchase. So we haven't yet seen the impact that these digital assistants and voice controlled devices will have. And I believe there will be more in the future. We also had a question on videos. And the first is, if I rank with a video, in most cases, it's actually not me ranking, it's YouTube. I'm an SEO, I want traffic on my website. That's how I was raised. So why is that good for me?
Well, YouTube is just another kind of search engine, and you can do SEO for your website. You can do SEO for your videos as well. And if there's a YouTube video ranking in the featured snippet, well, this is quite natural. You should try to get your video ranking. And having your video ranking, there is still this kind of small portion of text where you can place your link. You can name your link in the video itself, so people recognize where this information is coming from and where they can find it more.
I agree, and especially if we are targeting users who are very early in the sales funnel, just for branding reasons and for like giving them the information I want to give them. It's already nice if they watch my video. And then, of course, in this current layout of the Google Video slider, you actually have the name of the channel. So just by ranking, you get that little bit of brand recognition, that little bit of branding in there that you otherwise wouldn't get. And there's another question on videos. Do I have to produce and host them myself? Sorry. Or can I just embed any videos from YouTube to my site to basically increase the time on site? But I think we already answered that by saying that, yeah, YouTube is a search engine as well. So you definitely don't need to host yourself. Of course, there are also advantages to that. And then, yeah, I would say, of course, it makes sense to produce your own videos if you have the budget. But yeah, if you just include any video on your site, I very rarely see that you can take over the video ranking from YouTube. So,
but it still might make sense if you don't have the budget for producing your own videos. You might not rank on YouTube, you might not rank in Google video search, but you might increase the time on site, and this even gets you better rankings for the user search results.
Or might just provide good information to users. Sure. But then again, this might be good, but not going to help you with SERP features. Another question we had received is if there's a difference in SERP features between desktop and mobile.
Well, there are most of the SERP features that we see on desktop are there on mobile as well. But there are some SERP features that we only see on mobile. Just look at MP featured snippets, for example. On some kind of product service, we see this product carousel, which is not there on our desktop. So there are some differences there.
Yeah, and there's a question, how important is AMP really? And I think you already spoke to that already. If you're in a space where a fast website is important, and if your competitors have it, kind of makes sense. I mean, there are many people arguing against AMP because, of course, yes, it can hurt your conversion rate, but for most companies that I know, the AMP version will be faster than the fastest thing your IT team can build. So my recommendation is to go for it in most cases. And of course, the very, very specific question, what is the most important SERP feature? And I guess we can combine this with another question. Which SERP feature has the biggest potential to give me traffic? And which SERP feature has the biggest potential to steal my traffic?
Well, this is probably the answer box or the featured snippet. Okay.
that was easy. Another question, can I manipulate the content in the Google Knowledge Graph to control what's in the knowledge panel or what's in the answer box for what's the capital of Germany?
This one we probably cannot change, but Google draws the data from various sources. One of the most important ones is Wikidata. Formerly known as, what was it again?
Freebase?
Freebase, exactly. Some are from schema.org, so if you can provide data, that's good. So if you can change the data on Wikipedia, for example, on what's the capital of Germany, you might have a chance on changing Berlin to Munich.
Yeah, and actually, since you mentioned Freebase, many years ago, I had some fun with Freebase. So I put myself in there as an entity, and even now, if you go to Google and search for how old is Malte Landwehr or what is Malte Landwehr's job, you will receive the data that I put into Freebase many, many years ago. And one interesting thing is Google forgot the day and month when I'm born. Now they only have the year, so they pretend that I'm already 33, even though I'm still 32. And it used to be that they have the exact date. So I don't know why Google think that it had to forget this. But since I've hacked myself into Freebase or simply edited myself, I mean, it was completely fine and legal. I've been an entity in the knowledge graph and been showing up in various places. And even the related people Google is showing next to my name are exactly the people I put in there, because they were also back in those days manipulating Freebase for their own entity. So there was a time when it was a lot simpler to manipulate that data. And actually for the knowledge panels, you now sometimes have the ability, this button to say claim if you think the data is wrong. And if you are a huge authority, so I know this story from one of our clients, they actually used to call Google and tell them, hey, there's something wrong in your knowledge panel, and Google changes within 1 or 2 days. But I mean, you can only do that when you're the absolute authority on that topic. Like, you are Apple and the name of the founder is wrong in the knowledge panel. Yes, you can call Google and yes, they will fix it. But for the normal SEO out there, it's really not an option to call Google and tell them to change it. Another interesting question, how does Google select websites to rank in these various SERP features? And when I have a really small website, do I have any chance to show up, or will the big guys take everything?
The big guys are actually doing a quite good job on, but this is something that you as a small website SEO can also do. I mean, doing a good job and answering the exact questions that they are ranking featured snippets for might even get you featured snippets. So, yeah, it's still possible.
Okay, we've almost reached our time limit. So last question, that actually is pretty good for you. We only talked about Google, but there's also Bing and Baidu. Are there any SERP features that these search engines have that Google doesn't have that you think are worth mentioning?
For Baidu, mostly like 50% of the search results, of the usual search results, are having a featured snippet. They're showing a picture on the left-hand side in the snippet. And so it makes sense doing good job in image SEO for Baidu. But most of the time, yeah, there are many featured snippets Baidu is showing, but it's usually their own entities they're showing.
Yeah, Baidu is pretty good at pushing their own entity. Like, I have a feeling even stronger than the Google Knowledge Graph.
Yeah, actually, not only Baidu, even the other Chinese search engines are showing their own entities. So.
Yeah, and for Bing, there's one that I really like, which is very similar to the featured snippet. And it's called like opinions from the web. So if you put in something like, was Brexit a good idea, or is salt healthy, or is coffee healthy? Sometimes you will get opinions from the web, and then you have a pro and a contra opinion, and both next to each other. And I guess Bing is using that specifically to avoid giving an answer in a situation where two groups in the population that are pretty large have very different and very strongly different beliefs. Yeah, I think we have answered all questions. If not, we can maybe do a follow-up blog post, but I think we need to look into that if it's worth it. If you have any other questions that we forgot or that you didn't get to ask, please reach out. And yeah, I would say that's it from our side. And have a nice day from Berlin. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.